Hey guys, so I waited today to actually make this video because I wanted to make sure everything that was in BlizzCon got covered so that I could make a video and not have to do any updates. So that's why I'm doing it today as opposed to yesterday, even though yesterday we did get a lot of news. However, today we got some more questions answered in an official Q&A and then a QA that was done by Mr. GM that I watched on Twitch. So I'm going to answer a lot of the questions that we had before going into TBC BlizzCon kind of stuff today. And then also I'm going to give a few takes that are personally my opinions and they might not be shared by everyone. So first off, I have to say that my last video that I did where I kind of talked about what could possibly be covered at BlizzCon, we actually got a lot of answers to most of that, and I was pretty close on a lot of my assumptions. So first off, one of the biggest things that I took away from this is especially in Mr. GM's interview and the questions that he asked, we got a very good answer, which was he asked, will this be adjusted with community feedback? And that was a question about the drums from leatherworking, and the guy that answered, Brian, said absolutely. So the great news there is that they are, of course, listening to the community, and there's already been things that have been changed that was announced. So one of the first things that they said was they showed the phases that was going to be rolling out with TBC, and they showed that Arena Season 1 was not going to be within Phase 1. However, after people already kind of complained about that and said that that wasn't the best fit for how the gear progression was going to be, they already announced that they would be changing that, and that most likely it sounds like Arena Season 1 will also be within Phase 1. It probably just obviously won't be out at the very beginning of the launch of the game, which is a good thing anyways because people are leveling up and doing dungeons and everything like that, so it doesn't really matter anyways. But yeah, the phases in my opinion look really, really good. There's some concerns people have, but overall I think with those arena seasons being tweaked a little bit, I think the phases look really, really good, and I don't have any complaints personally. They addressed the fact that, you know, tier 4 and tier 5 could be in the game at the very beginning, and that's how it was back in the day, and they addressed that and moved those apart so that we're not going to get we're not going to get tier 5 and tier 4 gear at the same time. So that's really, really good, and that's going to be a lot better for progression of items. So moving on, they also said that the drums would be tweaked in some way. They're not going to just flat out nerf them or remove them. They said they're going to be tweaked in a way that makes it a little bit more healthy, so you don't have to go to a raid with 25 leatherworkers. So this is really, really good news. I think a lot of us really wanted this, and the fact that they already listened to this is great. So moving on from that, they also said that there will be a pre-patch coming out, which will allow us to level up both Blood Elves and Draenei's. That also would probably have the XP nerf that is 20% nerfed XP needed to level from 1 to 60, which was added also in TBC. And they're also going to probably have mounts at level 30 because that was with 2.4.3, which is our next topic. Everything in Classic TBC will be around 2.4.3, which is the final patch within TBC. So this is very similar to how we got 1.12 in terms of Classic WoW. So we didn't have the earlier patches in Classic WoW. Same thing goes for TBC. We won't have the earlier patches for TBC. However, what they said is that just means like the base content and the base changes to like bug fixes and it seems like talents and everything like that will be in their 2.4.3 state. However, things that were changed over time to make things easier, so dungeon bosses, raid bosses, and other content like that will be kept in their more difficult or challenging state. So that's really good news for people that want to have somewhat of a challenge in TBC when it comes to raiding. I still think that overall TBC could possibly use some buffs in terms of the dungeon and raid content. However, to know that they're at least making these changes is really, really good. I will do a video later on about the pre-patch because there's a lot of things to cover just about the pre-patch and things that we will want to get ready for that. But right now I just want to talk about the things that are kind of big for TBC as of now that we know. So the other thing is that the attunements are also going to be based on the earlier attunements in the game. So later on, there was changes to the rep you needed for keys to get into your heroics, and changes to the attunements overall. And the fact that they're going to keep them at their, more difficult state early on in the game is also another good thing that they obviously seem to realize was an important thing to keep, similar to how TBC was in the beginning. And a lot of this sentiment, just with all these changes that we're hearing about, it sounds like they really know what went right with Classic and other things that kind of went wrong. So they definitely learned from Classic, and they are definitely listening to the community. And it sounds, everything I've heard so far from BlizzCon this year has really made me excited for TBC in terms of how they're handling things. So one thing that we didn't get answered, which I really want to hear on, is Leeway. So we know that they changed spell batching and they removed that, which will be really important for arenas, and just in general wasn't really good for Classic in general. I think some people early on thought it would make the game more, similar to how it was back in the day. But from everything that we've all dealt with now after having spell batching in the game, I think everyone hates it overall. So the fact that they changed spell batching is obviously something that was needed for TBC arenas. But the other thing that I really hope that they do take a look at is Leeway. So Leeway is basically to account for any kind of latency or lag between clients. Like if you're fighting in PvP, what happens is as soon as you start movement and you're starting to run away and an enemy is chasing you, there's a greater range at which you can be hit by melee attacks, which obviously as a druid, as a player who plays a druid, that's really frustrating if you're trying to run away from someone. However, it also impacts people in arena, not only Taurens with the larger hitbox or druids, but it also just affects anyone. If you're trying to run around a pillar to LOS someone, which obviously is a huge gameplay aspect in TBC arenas, pillar running and just trying to escape from your enemy team is very important. And if a rogue can easily get a crippling poison on you when you technically were around the corner because of Leeway, it's going to be really frustrating. And it's also going to make classes like Warrior and Rogues just that much stronger, even though that wasn't really a change that was necessary. So hopefully that gets addressed. I would really like to see that. But that's one thing that we haven't heard on so far. They also said, like I said, raids will be in their pre-nerf states. So that's great. They also are going to give the seals from both Paladins to both of them. So Blood Elves will have Seal of Vengeance and also Seal of Blood, and likewise with Draenei. I think this is a good change. Everyone was kind of worried about this, and in general, I think this helps the faction imbalance when it comes to Paladins. Obviously, racials, there's no word on racials, so I don't think racials are going to be touched in any way. I think that just opens up a whole new can of worms. So the racials are still definitely favoring Horde for PvE, but in general, I think the Paladin change was a nice kind of nod to some of the issues that surround the kind of imbalance, especially with when it comes to like a rep Paladin. So another thing we haven't heard on is there's still no word on dual spec, which I know a lot of people were kind of concerned about. In Classic WoW, you can PvP with your PvE spec and do all right, just because it's normally you're in a team of 10, 15, or 40 players, so your role doesn't matter quite as much. However, if you are in a PvE spec and you want to jump in and do a few arenas, you're going to have to respec. And the fact that arenas are like much more casual way to play the game, and so having to respec constantly to just do some arena games with your friends would be really frustrating. So hopefully they do add a dual spec. Now I know some people have said they could add the reset or the respec costs to be cheaper. However, the really nice thing about dual spec is that when you switch from one spec to another, all your keybinds and your like how your action bars are set up switches over as well. So that's one nice thing about having a dual spec versus just cheaper respec costs. However, both would be a welcome, improvement in my opinion. So those are the big takeaways from TBC news at BlizzCon. So a lot of really, really positive things. I don't see too many negative things. And now we're going to hit the part of the video where some of you guys will disagree with me, and that's fine. And some of you might agree with me, or you'll have different takes, and I'd love to hear them in the comments. But these are going to be my kind of more spicy takes, or things that I personally feel strongly about, and many of you might feel very differently. So the first one is, I don't really care about the 58 boosts. I know a lot of people are very upset about that, to the point where some people have said that they're not even going to play TBC because of the boosts. But I personally don't care. And the reason why I say that is I have several friends that either play on a different server right now, or they don't play the game at all. And I know that many of them will probably want to play TBC, and being able to get into the game with them much sooner by them having the ability to do a 58 boost, or them coming over from a different server and being able to boost one of their characters is really nice, in my opinion. Now, the reason I don't think this is that big of a deal is because right now people get boosted to 60 anyways. It just takes longer, and instead of spending real money, you're just spending gold for a mage to boost you to 60. So I do agree with some people saying that it could impact botting. For example, if you have a level 70 and you're botting in Outlands and your account gets banned, it's very easy for you to create a new account, buy a level 58 boost, and get back into the game, which is why I think it might be a nice idea to have the level 58 boost be locked behind maybe having an authenticator or something like that. I'm not really sure how many bots out there have an authenticator attached to their account, but doing something like that might limit that. But overall, I don't really mind the 58 boost. So that's one thing that might be a little bit different from some of your opinions. But then the other thing is, I also understand why they have you pay if you want to keep a copy of your character on a TBC server and a classic server. So right now, the way they've explained it is when you move into classic TBC, all of the realms right now that you play on automatically will move into TBC. They're what they consider progression realms. So when you move into TBC, it should be seamless. I think they said that there's going to be a prompt when you log into the game. But other than that, it should be, you're continuing on to TBC. Now, if you want to keep a character in Classic, you can do that by copying that character over to a Classic server. However, if you want to be able to keep them on both Classic and TBC servers, you have to pay a fee. And the reason why I think paying a fee is, in my opinion, all right, is because it stops people from literally copying every single one of their characters over, and it also should cut down on the fact that a lot of people are going to be duping their gold. So if you have a lot of people that that are in your guild and they could just pool all their gold together, and then they can copy it over onto a level 1, and now a level 1, or say it's they only allow you to do it to a level 20. You can copy a level 20 over to TBC servers. Well, then you can copy a level 20 over to a TBC server with all of that gold. So I think that is a good thing to do, making it paid. I know it does make with the 58 boosts and this character copy thing, it does introduce the whole idea of Blizzard just being kind of greedy and wanting to make money, which obviously as a company, of course they do, but I do think they have reasons behind doing these things. as well. So I'm not too upset about either of these. And now the other take that I have, guys, is this isn't really a change, but I think a lot of people need to understand that layering is probably here to stay in TBC. So in Classic WoW, some of the heavier populated servers, they had layering for quite a long time in the game, and then while some of the lower populated servers didn't really have to deal with layering quite as much, but still there was a big chunks of time where there was no layering within the game. And I don't think this is going to be the case in TBC. Even if you have a fairly small server, I still think there's going to be quite a few layers. And the reason I think that is just because Outlands, you're taking a huge population, and while they used to be spread out over all of Azeroth, now you're pushing them all into Outlands, which means that, you know, you have a finite amount of resources. And if you think about just trying to go out and do some herbalism right now in the game, just how much more of a pain it would be in TBC. And you've got to realize right now in the game, you have quite a few zones to choose from going in and doing herbalism. Even some of the lower level zones are great gold per hour to go in and find herbs there. And right now you're basically stuck to having to go into dungeons and farm herbs because the herbs in the world are just always picked through. So the idea of not having layers in TBC would just be a complete nightmare. And I do think layers are going to be here to stay because the zones and just like how everyone's squished into these certain areas is just going to be much more of a nightmare. So I don't really see any way around it. And I'm not a huge fan of layering. Obviously, I think there's a lot of people that choose to exploit it too. However, I don't really see any better solution. So that's my other takeaway from all of this, is that layering in TBC is going to probably just become something that we're all accustomed to and is just going to be here to stay. So hopefully you guys were as excited as I was for all of these announcements at BlizzCon this year. I also was pretty excited about the other announcements that they had for their WoW related stuff. The Diablo stuff really excited me. So hopefully you guys had fun watching it. I know we are now into the phase where people are going to start getting excited about TBC, and there's going to be a lot of information to cover. I will start making more videos as we get closer to the launch of TBC. I know a lot of you want more Druid content, and don't worry, that stuff is in the works as well. And I know there's going to be a lot of new Druid players as Druids become significantly, let's put it that way, significantly better in TBC than they are in Classic WoW. So I invite all of the new viewers that are starting Druids to also stick around, because there's going to be some interesting stuff in that regard. But yeah, that's where we're going to leave it. My next video will be coming out later in the week, and it's going to probably be covering the pre-patch and ways for you to get ready for leveling your Draenei or Blood Elves. So thanks all for watching. Hope you enjoyed BlizzCon as much as I did, and as always, I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care.